Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavine, it does. They need me.
Welcome to End of Dragons Daily 40? Did we lose a day in there somewhere over the past 48 hours? I'm pretty sure we did. Things have been so hectic and weird for me the past few days. In any case, if you're new, this is the daily community back and forth show in which we discuss all the fun stuff that could be going on with the next expansion, End of Dragons. We just got done doing a video talking about fishing. The current topic on the cards is what will happen with the next Warrior Elite spec. So be sure down below to keep posting your messages and thoughts on that. But for today, I want to give you guys some miscellaneous discussion, a bunch of comments that I've been skipping over the past couple of days. Footage in the background will be something hopefully entertaining to watch. I actually crashed just before sitting down to record this in Guild Wars, which has made me very sad. Maybe we'll have low graphics on, but I'll play around with some of those UI toggle settings that came in sometime last year and I feel like didn't really give them enough of a time in the spotlight. You never know, with End of Dragons I might actually leave some of these settings on. And on that note as well, by the way, today I pulled the trigger and actually picked up the new PC. Over on the Spud Discord, I kind of made a build, went back and forth with members of the community on what might be improvements to it, and well, now it's just the waiting game for the 3000 series of graphics cards, which if you guys are out of the loop at all at the moment, you may not realize are actually really hard to find. They're getting snatched up very, very quickly, and generally things are very expensive. In any case, let's run on in. First of all, here's a crazy message. Drakeniel made me laugh. Said, fishing as a topic is getting old. This is like the third episode talking extensively about this. I really don't get it. How is it that important? It's an AFK feature, I roll. Why would the devs spend time and effort coding for this non-play activity? I understand ArenaNet doesn't mobilize the resources to clutter their server with people not even playing. This is an amazing comment. First of all, we did one episode on fishing. I just mentioned it as an upcoming topic in 2 episodes. That wasn't extensive discussion. I mean, what show are you watching? We did one video on it. But you've, and it's hilarious because you seem to want us to move on, but you've brought up some good points that I don't think were expressed before. First, yeah, this general negativity I mentioned, a lot of people feel this way. It's an AFK feature, I roll, what the hell, why would we care? You got to remember, though, that a lot of MMOs is not just the moment-to-moment experience in gameplay. It's the incentive, it's the context through which you're doing what you do, having some long-term goal. It's the reward schemes, and I do mean the word schemes there, that I think fishing would very much benefit from. But there is this idea of, do they actually want people taking up server space and server time and resources, even if they're, like, so to speak, not playing? Well, I made the argument in the previous video that if they're semi-AFK, i.e. they're there to notice if someone's adventuring near them to have a conversation, if they're still sort of engaging with their guild chat and stuff, then it's actually very beneficial. And in fact, a player that's just sitting there not using any skills, but is maybe using chat and stuff and is appearing present so the game looks populated and so on. You know, imagine a fishing feature that really pushes people into Queensdale, Kessex, and all the racial equivalents. Those maps, when a new person comes to Guild Wars 2, the game's going to look really populated because there's people around everywhere. They're all fishing in all these lakes and rivers. I think that that's a powerful thing. And if they're not using skills, then they kind of are taking less resources, aren't they? Like, look at the way that the game basically dies when lots of people are clashing together in World versus World. So I think it's an interesting point. I've seen it a few times before, mainly because of Guild Wars' business model. There's always been this underlying discussion going on with this game, especially in the past, where it was like, all right, they sold you the box. They don't care if you stick about for Living World. They don't care if you stick about for these small updates. They already got your money, so why do they have to worry? That's why this is fundamentally a casual game. You know, these kinds of arguments. I think they're more a thing of the past. I think a lot of ArenaNet's money is from keeping people invested and the gem store and appearing that they have a game that matters and a community that feels like people should be invested long term. So these are all within ArenaNet's best interest. And when it comes down to, are you going to lose that player completely, or are they going to continue logging in because they're fishing in a semi-AFK activity? Surely it's the semi-AFK fishing activity that you want to implement. Another comment as I round up the fishing stuff. Dean Chandler says there's gonna be fishing only because of the gem store fishing rods. This is a funny thing. I don't actually see fishing as something they can monetize. I don't see it as something they could do a lot with the gem store. There's much better things for them to focus on. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I kind of want to see fishing in End of Dragons. I want to see ArenaNet put something in there because it would be good for the game and the game's community, and not just because there's a directly monetizable facet to it. You know, as great as mounts were and all of that stuff, you can cynically say, well, they're only there because they knew they could sell the skins, even though the dev comments were kind of to the contrary before the system came in. You know, when I look at something like the Warclaw release, I 100% am a cynic with that. I don't believe that World vs. World needed the Warclaw. I don't think it necessarily improved the gameplay much. And I think that the devs with the task with implementing it were inspired enough to do something cool. But I think first and foremost, the Warclaw was added to the game so that World vs. Worlders would be buying mount skins. I really do believe that. And fishing just kind of doesn't fit that matrix. So hey, maybe this will be the thing that removes it altogether. On the topic of interesting gem store stuff that they could monetize, one feature I see in a ton of other games, and I even kind of miss in Guild Wars 2, is an emote wheel. Really, you know, like you log in to play a game of League, the easiest, quickest, most efficient way to communicate with people quite often is using the emote wheel, and you can customize it in any way that you like. League is one of those games where it demands your full attention a lot of the time, and it can be tricky to type under certain moments, so just popping a quick emote is very, very useful. I see Guild Wars 2 as absolutely that kind of game, and with the social aspects of the MMO being so important, I think, yeah, ArenaNet should look into this, and I wouldn't be surprised if that came, not necessarily just with the expansion, but during the expansion era. It's a good idea. An earnable emotes in-game would be great, different earnable ones based on what elite spec you've got or what class you're playing. But then, of course, I think they would sell them on the store. One final fishing-oriented comment from Dracia Anderson, who says, there already is a fishing minigame in Guild Wars 2 as a part of the event in the Sandswept Isles. You're so right. I completely spaced on this. I knew I was going to space on this as well. When I first started engaging with that way back with Sandswept Isles, you know, that's one of those events, and that's one of those moments. Season 4 is so full of this stuff, where there's like something really cool and really interesting that's been put in a Living World release, but you just know, because it only kind of really exists in a major way for those few months, and then everybody kind of moves on, that somehow, like, it will be underappreciated eventually. Somehow people will forget, myself included, you know. And you're right, there is actually a really cool fishing event already in the game, and maybe we could look at the way that they did that for inspiration. Hey, that's a good idea for the footage in the background, don't you guys think? Keep an eye out for it. Level 1 videographer says, hey WP, I'm curious if you have any thoughts or commentary on the latest Samurai Gem Store release. This is now 2 Canthan-esque releases back to back, and this one seems far less directly connected to the Lunar New Year. Plus, it's got a very heavy demon aesthetic, and I was trying to remember, but is it the first time the word samurai has been used in the universe? Could it just be a cool new look? But I'm always down to believe these things are subtle teasers to End of Dragons in some way. Yeah, this is interesting. I don't think they'd really used the word samurai before. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, hell, I even read that word out to you guys in one of our Empire Divided videos that's ultimately just a few months old. But I tend to not really think about Guild Wars 2 as hosting full-blown samurais, and here we are with the Gem Store. The Gem Store's in this weird place where it's like semi-canon in the things that it delivers to us. You know, there's a Pegasus mount. Does that really mean that Pegasi exist in the lore? But I don't really think so. And yet at other times it seems to be hinting at really juicy lore stuff, something we obviously mentioned just recently with that Hammer of the Three Realms. So what do we think about this one? Do we take it or leave it? You know, the other thing I'm wondering is if this is in the game and it sells well and so on and gives a bit of that Cantha vibe, surely we'll get some kind of full-blown ninja costume too, right? Does ninja appear anywhere? Samurais and ninjas out in End of Dragons. Don't forget as well, for the idea of outfits, that when POF was coming out, we had the Forged outfit, which looks like what I think might have been a design for Menzies if he was ever going to make it into the X-Pack. It's like a decapitated, forged army member kind of thing. And unless I'm wrong, that kind of creature did appear as enemies throughout the X-Pack, right? So maybe you'll see these being reused on enemies in End of Dragons. A point of clarification I feel the need to make, sort of, here. Bear with me, guys. Mike Broom says, I think that raising the level cap would also not be useful to encourage leveling together because of all those tomes of knowledge. Tomes of knowledge, man. All right, so first of all, you're right. Obviously, you're right. Tomes of knowledge would destroy this idea. Tomes of knowledge actually destroy a ton of ideas, and in many ways they heavily affected even the Revenant. Not just the Tomes of Knowledge, but the level 60 level ups from anniversaries, the level 50 levels ups, hell, even like the level 30 or 40 ones, which are comparatively easy to get, especially for a lot of these has-been players on aged accounts at this point. Then you have the fact they'll probably sell a level 80 boost straight up with the X-Pack, And all of a sudden, none of these ideas really work. So for all of these discussions, I've basically been making the assumption, I didn't really say it out loud, and maybe this is the mistake, but that these systems would be dealt with in some way, that you would kill the tomes of knowledge somehow. The question is, how do you do that without seriously ticking off the players who have been hoarding them? And like, I'm an account that has also been hoarding them. I would be 100% happy to lose all of them and not be compensated in any way, but these are MMO players, these are Guild Wars 2 players, and I think that ArenaNet have to like devise a whole other story to getting them out of the economy. Before then they could pursue something interesting like this. And I want to be honest as well, I really don't know whether ArenaNet is that kind of studio sometimes. Like, I feel like this would be a mistake, in my opinion. What I'm about to say, I think, would be a mistake. But I feel like they're just kind of easy breezy about it, and they say, well, if players want to level, that's their right, that's their choice, isn't it? They should have the freedom to play the game exactly how they want. So, you know, if you want to level without using the tomes, then just go for it, man. Here's a full level 80. Like, I feel like they're that kind of philosophy, and I think it's very damaging to the game in a lot of ways. And I'm sure I'll get some hate down below over that specific thought. But I really do think sometimes players have too much freedom and too much access to things that will undermine their own enjoyment in the long run. I think level 80 boosters and all those level boosters for a long time have been exactly that. If I could flip a switch and get rid of all of that stuff with zero compensation for a single player, even if there's not a new race or leveling idea or any of that, I would do it in a heartbeat. An interesting thought along these lines as well here from Arutha. Hey WP, one topic I don't think you've talked about is the option of making the expansion zones leveling zones. I don't think there'd be any difference if Dry Top was level 20 to 40 with the scaling for the level 80s. Right, so this is an interesting one as well. I actually do think it's possible. So you could have a long, big continent that is slowly leveling up new players who chose to start there, but also all the vets are just being scaled down, and there you go. I'm in two minds here. One of my minds is that I kind of hate this idea, and I think I hate it because of my experiences in Fallout 76, where you run around in that game and it's got like a leveling system, and it acts like leveling matters, but then you realize every single enemy is always scaled to be exactly your level, no matter where you are or where you go or how out of your depth you are. I mean, maybe there's a few random little exceptions out there, but generally the whole leveling system, it's like they built the idea of leveling, and then they built a whole other system to just wholly invalidate it, and the two systems cancel each other out, and it just seems like this weird bloated game where it's like, why do you have leveling at all if everything is always scaled kind of perfectly to me? And I wouldn't want Guild Wars 2 to end up sort of feeling like it's in that place, but I kind of think it would work under one big condition, and that's that they actually rework the scaling a little. By that, I actually mean make it a bit harsher. Like a lot of the footage you've been watching in End of Dragons recently, I've been on this rev, and I've been wanting to get map completion vaguely, because I think a Gift of Exploration might be good to get for when I go for Warbringer and all this stuff. But so many of these zones are boring. There's a reason why I was map comping in Ore first, because in Ore, at least I had like the big numbers to look at first of all, and I do think there's a part of that, but I had slightly more durable enemies, and if I wanted to like solo a champion or something, it'd be a little bit more interesting. In those earlier zones, I mean, you're still getting reasonably interesting experiences around Bloodtide, but when you go a little bit earlier than that, the scaling is just so out of whack that there's absolutely nothing there. You kill things way too quickly, and that's not just me on an optimized build, that's pretty much anyone on any build. And I get the idea that like you want this power fantasy, you want this payoff to being a high level, so even though I'm scaled down in Queensdale, I still want to feel like a god. I feel like that's fine, but from Kessex onwards and all the levels around that band, I kind of want to be having real experiences, you know? I want to feel like all that content is super interesting, and it's just not. There's kind of a double problem with vanilla as well, which is you want to experience some level 80 content in vanilla. Well, what have you got? You've got Ore. But when you go to Ore, there's no hearts there. And I know people don't like hearts, but what that means in a Guild Wars 2 with mounts, ever since Path of Fire, is map completing Ore doesn't really mean any combat. You just get on a mount, zerg to a POI, or a Vista, or a Hero Challenge. Hero Challenge is the best here, because sometimes they'll be guarded by something. But all of these objectives, they're just walk near it and press F, or simply just walk near it. That's it. Then you get on your mount and you move to the next one. And so what that means is some of the only level 80 or high level content you're not even fighting in, because they didn't add any hearts where fighting is the most optimal way to push the heart up or whatever. I suppose you could include Dry Top and the Silver Waste. I do appreciate they're accessible to core. So, you know, they help alleviate the issue a little. But when I look at the prospect of going back to Corteria, it's boring to me because the scaling, I think, is not working right. And so, you know, this could be a good opportunity with End of Dragons if they did this idea. To really refine, look back at the scaling. That would help with dungeon balance and stuff. And then utilize it for the expansion maps. I think you're right. This could work. Because there's still progression for people to go for. There's still mastery points to go for. There's still hero points to obtain for your new elite specializations. And can I make a point as well? If they did the racial specialization idea that I talked about before, there'd be a whole new value to hero points, wouldn't there now, guys? And when they did new living world maps and stuff, they could filter in not just new mastery points to go for, but hero points as well and hero challenges. Because you've got so many more to spend, and all that excess currency we're all sitting on now would have value. Wow, that was a hell of a response there. That covered like multiple videos worth of backlog of discussions. Hopefully you guys followed along. In Dervish says, Haywoods, I would like for you to talk about the possibility of having a companion as the new mastery system. I posted a comment in one of the first dailies, and yeah, I don't think if that isn't the direction ArenaNet has been taking, it would be late for them to change it. However, it'd be nice to see companions in the Guild Wars future. Yeah, I remember your comment about this. I kind of dismissed it because here's the thing, it's very easy to ask for features that you heard about they were maybe working on at one point in development. So everybody out of the loop, some of the earliest stuff we heard about Guild Wars 2 was that it would have a companion system, one ally that could follow you around. Now, why they were thinking of that was because they were coming out of Guild Wars 1, a purely party-based game for the most part, where the big feature for Nightfall that they just released when they were conceiving of all of this was the idea of heroes. And I think basically what they thought was, why are we forcing people to have 3 heroes? Wouldn't it be cool if you just had one? If you want to play a healer, then your hero can be a damaging character. If you want to play a damaging character, your hero can be a supportive character or whatever. Let's build that into a whole new system. Companions, engage some RPG elements with it. They were probably looking at other big RPG franchises coming from the studios like BioWare at the time. And they thought this would be cool. And they said, yeah, that was going to be a Guild Wars 2 feature, companions. And then as development went along, they kind of realized, well, hold on, we don't need the companion at all to make a player self-sustaining. We can just make sure that every player is forced to have their own heal skill that is balanced to be strong enough. And now you've eliminated this stupid need to have like a support with you all the time. And now we can be a purely solo experience. And hey, maybe this is a lot more fun. And Guild Wars 2 kind of born out of that. And the idea of a companion just didn't make any sense. So then to in 2021 say, oh, let's do a companion. Like, it's just not there. There's no need for it. You know, you may have heard about it at one point, but why? Well, actually, I think there are some good answers to why. I think that they could do a companion system for End of Dragons. I really do think they could, or at any point in the future. But the point is that it would be the same in name, but it wouldn't be the same in function. The idea of a companion now, I think, would lean a lot more into the story. Like, that you really enjoy the character that you're with, and you're getting a lot of opportunities to interact and hear their opinions and stuff. This is going to sound a bit crazy, but I know a lot of people have asked for like romance possibilities in Guild Wars. Well, you know, a companion system could do stuff like that. I think it'd be a little bit less about the gameplay side, but they could have that there. Another thing that a companion system might be able to do is actually look at stuff like Fire Ellie Powder and Ogre Pet Whistles and Sunspear Summoning and stuff like that. All these weird summon items, you could actually mix them into it properly and maybe it would work well. You'd have to be careful not to tread on the Ranger's feet, but it could be a full-fledged system. And most importantly, I actually see this as a valuable mastery to go for. As good masteries and fun masteries are kind of difficult to think of, this would be a nice one. And the higher your mastery goes, the closer your companionship is or something. I do think since End of Dragons isn't doing mounts, it's got a lot of hard work to do to excite us with masteries. This could be one of them. Neslug, his name isn't Neslug, but getting some FF10 vibes here. Naylug S says, I just realized you're playing Core Rev. It's amazing. It's what I've been doing for a while too. I really like the traits of the Rev and its gameplay around the energy, and having that new profession skill given 25 energy whenever you want makes it really dynamic to play. But I wish there was more. I think 3 simple utilities per Legends makes it too simple, and I've dreamt many times of just adding one more to choose from. It would be so amazing. How do you feel? Well, yeah, I think ask any Revenant out there. This is something they'd like to see. I'll do you one better though. I actually think this is a really important update. Core Rev does feel a bit naked. It's not just this, but it is also the specializations too. Like, I've got corruption on a lot of this footage, and I've basically just picked up a lot of the resistance traits, because the other traits kind of don't fit with a power play style. That's why I recommended that in the Grandmaster slot in that Traits I'd Like to See video. And there's another side of it too, and that's Salvation. If you look at Salvation for the purposes of general PvE wandering around roaming, it's kind of too hyper-focused. And I would really like to see actually 3 traits change in Salvation. Pick the ones that really work and you really like and create interesting animations and ideas. Preserve those, but make space for some totally new ideas in Salvation, so I could viably maybe swap into that. And the tablet too. It would be nice to have some more utility when I'm alone in the open world, or hey, when I have just my one companion. But yeah, so it does feel a bit naked. Having one more utility skill as well is a great way to fix this and build the rev up. It just feels weird, man. When I play other classes, I feel like I actually get the game of picking utilities, and on rev I just don't, and it sucks. Lastly, a defense of the aggressive gem store practices that I'm just going to kind of leave out there. We're actually talking about big, non-Guild Wars 2 industry-oriented discussions here. But I think this is an interesting point. I've seen it many times on the internet before. Through the context of Guild Wars 2, maybe it takes on a slightly different shape. But here, Nebula Star says, I've bought quite a bit off the store, actually. Mount skins, gliders, armors, outfits, a little bit of everything, really. I'm glad to support the game and get something for it. What most gamers conveniently forget is the price of new games has not increased since the late 1990s. It's the same amount of time. Movie tickets on average have doubled in price. Take into account how much more expensive it is to make the games, in addition to normal inflation, not to mention the continued maintenance of online games, and a new game should be costing at least $120 or more. But the gaming community has not allowed the price to be increased over 20 years, so game companies have to find other ways to make up the difference. So, you often see messages like this when people are talking about season passes and stuff like that, and games as a live service that you should be continually paying into. I do want to say, I think your message is a little bit disingenuous. I don't know how it's been over in the United States, but when I was playing PlayStation 2 and Xbox Original, right, which was when I really started picking up with games. I played the PlayStation 1, but it was that era that I was really, really getting into it. A game was 40 quid. You'd go downtown to a brick and mortar store, you'd pick the game, and if it was new, it was a £40 game. Then, I remember with the next generation, through the Xbox 360 era and the Xbox One era, they've been 50 quid. There was definitely a price jump right around the PlayStation 3's launch where they were 50 quid, and now we're talking about them going to 60. So yes, I do think boxes have gotten more expensive. We don't have to lie about that. The fact that it's not proportional to the amount of extra manpower and work that goes into AAA releases is another question, and we don't have to shy from that. The other thing I would say about Guild Wars, I still think Guild Wars is one of the most value for money experiences you can have in all of gaming. That, especially within its genre, that was absolutely true for Guild Wars 1, and that's absolutely true for Guild Wars 2. I really do want to make the case, okay, that if you've been a dedicated Guild Wars 2 player that didn't want to do it, you could have had 10 years of gaming, and all you would have had to have done is bought Core for £50, Heart of Thorns for £50, and POF for £30. That's it! £130 for 10 years. Oh, and then all the half-price sales. So with a view to that, can I really stomach a unicorn coming into the shop? Absolutely not. It's against the law. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one tomorrow, where we'll be talking about the Warrior Elite specialization. Let me know what you think below. You can get in touch with me on Discord, which is down in the description, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.